What makes this scarier than this? Hereditary is one of the films that has stuck with me over the years, but not because of any particular moment, although there are a few memorable ones. It sticks with me because of the subtle ways it tells this horrific story. Where many other films rely on clumsy, obvious jump scares, Hereditary excels through restraint. What Ari Aster includes but doesn't emphasize is exactly what makes it such a rewatchable film. Hi, I'm Kamran Rathout. I'll be moving back and forth through Hereditary in this video, so as usual, spoilers ahead. Let's start with the general, subtle approach of this film. Hereditary is a film about a demon looking for a body, which there are plenty of, but it keeps its distance from more stereotypical depictions of possession by focusing on what it would feel like to be inside an unsuspecting family targeted by a cult and the demon that they're summoning, Payman, who's represented by this shimmering, dancing light. This perspective directly impacts the cinematography and staging of the horrific elements. What might be in a close-up in other films is a background detail in Hereditary, which is much more terrifying in my opinion. It makes me feel like if I'm not paying close enough attention, I may miss something that could pose a threat. It puts me on edge. For example, the sound cue at the very end of the film that lets you know Annie has cut off her own head. She does so with a piano wire, but we never see a sequence where she's grabbing the piano wire. Instead, in a corner of a wide shot where the action is not focused on the piano, we can see the piano has been tipped over and broken apart. When there's a small important sound or something looming in the background, we, the audience, can see the signs of something terrifying closing in, but many of these details are unknown to most characters. Another example is in the blocking of Peter's hand during the classroom sequence. His arm is raised against his will in a strange manner and in a kind of pointing gesture. Why exactly doesn't matter to the plot, but if you're paying close attention, moments earlier, we see this depiction of the demon Payman holding an arm that's pointing. Ari Aster is putting the audience ahead of the characters, which injects paranoia into the scene. In some moments, it's a little more upfront, like the nuts in the chocolate cake that give Charlie an allergic reaction, but others are a little smaller in frame and a little quicker, like the marking on the telephone pole that we see when Charlie and Peter are on their way to the party. Together, they build tension and foreshadow Charlie's gruesome death. Either way, because these elements aren't verbally called out for you, your eyes dart around each shot looking for something that's out of place. And in most shots, you don't see anything, but you're still looking. Let's take the details surrounding the seance with Annie and Joni, for example. There are a couple of crucial yet almost unnoticeable details that happen in this scene. The first is that there's a small dancing light behind Annie, which looks remarkably similar to the one that represents Payman. Whether it was intentional visual effects or a happy accident lens flare, director Ari Aster trusted the audience to find the detail in the background. That moment of ambiguity makes the horror real and immediate, putting us ahead of Annie and raising the stakes for the next scene. And then, after the dolly-in, comes a moment of physical danger. Annie's hair is touched. The first time I watched this scene, the combination of noticing something that the character didn't, the dancing light, followed by the character's personal space being violated, resulted in an intense dread of what's to come. And then later, a desperate Annie comes back to Joni's house to find answers, and nearly everything is revealed. Peter's picture is to the right of the frame, as well as the center of the frame, on the table. At this point in the film, it's being made clear what's going on, but it's not being overemphasized. The film trusts that you're paying attention and keeping up. At first, these subtly disturbing moments are sporadic, but they get closer to one another as the film progresses and builds to its climax. The frequency of freaky imagery increases over time until the very end of the film is a barrage of unsettling moments that have closed in around Peter. One after another, all of these horror elements work together to do Payman's bidding, and the demon finally gets the male body he desired from the start. So, to answer the question of why this is better than this, it's because the moment is set up effectively and subtly. It tells the audience more than the protagonist knows. The blocking is clear in Hereditary. We know Annie is in the room, but where? While in The Exorcist Believer, the possessed girl disappeared to somewhere in the whole house. There are too many options of where she ran off to, so when she pops out, it feels random. And there's also the timing. This scare in The Exorcist Believer comes roughly halfway through the film, so we know that the main character isn't gonna die. Whereas the well-executed jump scare in Hereditary comes at the very end. Peter could absolutely die. That's the reason why subtle horror really means thought-through horror, well-timed horror. The scare comes from putting you ahead of the action by cluing you in with subtle details and respecting your place in the story. That results in a story world where there's more than what's on the surface or immediately relevant to the plot. You can dig deeper and notice things on a rewatch, which is always better in my opinion. What are your thoughts on Hereditary? Did you miss any of these details? Or maybe there are some that I didn't include that you enjoyed? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for spending this time with me. Please take a moment to follow, like, and subscribe. I'm Kamran Rathod, and I'll see you in the next one.